Well, Brown has a singular importance in our society. It really is the turning point for race in our country. So prior to Brown, we had segregation from top to bottom in society. And Brown, although it did not change things the next day, it certainly created the symbolism and the sort of the idea of change that then allowed the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Voting Rights Act of 1965, all of these areas of the law that have changed society really stem from that moment in Brown versus Board of Education when the court said separate schools are inherently unequal. Well, I would say all the changes were positive. We certainly saw the level of minority students attending predominantly white schools and the number of white students attending formerly African American schools go up drastically in the South. Prior to Brown, less than 1% of African American children attended integrated schools. Once desegregation really started, in a course of about 10 years, we saw the percentage of African American children attending integrated schools rise to about 40%. So we really went from 0 to 40% in a relatively short period, and that's an enormously important change. It changed the opportunities that those children would have for the rest of their lives. Well, there's certainly there's a mixed bag with school desegregation. One of the greatest losses that we experienced with school desegregation was that tens of thousands of African American teachers lost their jobs. That when they were not the students may have been welcome at the schools, but the minority principals and whatnot were not. So there was a lot of jobs lost, and those were never gotten back, and that's a huge loss. The school affects who's willing to teach there, who's willing to send their kids to get there, whether those be African American or white or Latino parents. Middle income parents are looking for the best education they can for their children. They look at a school, they see that it's struggling with resources, it's struggling with teachers, it's struggling with the discipline system. They're not going to go there. So as a result, we have schools that are not just predominantly minority, but predominantly poor. And being a predominantly poor school has 4 or 5 very serious negative consequences for those students. Whereas if those same students were dispersed into what we call middle-income schools that are more effectively managed, have better teachers, better resources, we see better educational outcomes for those students.